To become a good runner and meet your goals, you need to be consistent. Like consistency is a huge piece. You can't be consistent if you're always injured.
Welcome to Running is Cheaper Than Therapy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Wheeta L. Brown. I inspire and promote movement. I explain how running adds to life from a mental wholeness aspect, how obstacles can be overcome in life to make it to your finish line. Welcome to Running is Cheaper Than Therapy, episode 56. Today, I have Tammy Whyte. She is a running coach. After working in education for 12 years, Tammy chose to follow her passion of coaching and fitness and started her own coaching business, TY Training and Wellness. Her business is different from others in that she focuses on running smarter. She focuses on injury prevention, strength training, and building a welcoming community for all runners. While she loves coaching runners of all levels, she has found a particular fondness for coaching runners who consider themselves middle to back of the packers. In addition to run coaching and strength training, she provides through her business. She's also a group fitness instructor at Equinox in Chicago. Personally, she has a goal of running either a half or a full marathon in all 50 states, with 27 being completed so far. Please welcome Tammy to the show. Well, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I think your bio is very interesting. You worked in education for 12 years. What made you stop working in education to pursue your passion?
So honestly, I was just very burnt out of education. So yeah, I was really burnt out. I had 3 positions in education that had very toxic environments. And I had started coaching part-time with the local running store. And my degree is in exercise science. So I've always been interested in that. But I started coaching part-time and I really enjoyed run coaching. And as I got more burnt out from education and really didn't enjoy my jobs anymore, I started thinking more about run coaching as a full-time thing. And I really just saw that there was an opportunity there. So summer of 2017, I left education and started my LLC.
Okay. So what made you go into coaching in the first place? I assumed you had been running for a while.
I feel like coaching is very similar to teaching. Like the reason I went into coaching is similar to why I went to teaching. So after I graduated from Michigan, I had to teach for America. So I did teach for America because I wanted to make a difference. And that's always kind of been a big motivator for me, is making a difference in other people's lives. And so coaching is similar to that. Like you're just making a difference in a different part of someone's life as adults versus, teaching kids. Yeah, I just saw it as a way to make a difference. I had worked part-time at a running store in DC, and that store closed. And then it kind of like the next week I saw this email that they're looking for coaches to help coach their group program. And I was like, oh, well, I should go to this training. And so that's kind of how I initially got into it. I did coach cross country and track when I was a teacher. So I had coached like kids before. Coaching is, I like being able to positively impact people's lives. And so that's the big reason why I got into coaching in the first place, is to make a difference.
So you were already certified as a running coach when you were teaching? As far as running coaches, as far as the certifications that you need to teach?
So when you're coaching cross country and track in a middle school setting, like you don't need a certification for that. Like you just need to be like CPR, first aid certified. Just that's pretty much the same for any program. I don't know at the high school level, but generally you don't need to be certified. Even as a running coach, I am Roadrunner certified coach, but you don't have to be. You really, honestly, the fitness industry is very unregulated. I mean, I do have a number of certifications. Like I have a personal training certification, I have a different strength certification, I have Roadrunners run coach certification, nutrition certifications. I have a lot of certifications just because I think it's important that if you are going to be coaching something, the run coaching, you kind of like it's a it's a science, but it's also a lot of an art because you
Mhm.
know a lot about run coaching, but until you work with people, that's when you really like figure out how to best coach people because everyone's different. And
Mhm.
I mean, and it's also like you have to figure out who is your ideal person to work with. And I think for me, I've kind of like learned through it's been 4 years now of working with different people who I like to work with. And I do have the luxury now of turning people away, of like, you
That's
know,
good.
yeah, with one on one clients, I do screen them more because I know in the past, like red flags that have come up and things that haven't worked for me. So I know more what to look for with people to see if they would be a good fit for me in terms of my style of how I coach. So fitness industry is very unregulated. I do think it's important to have certifications, especially if you're doing like anything that's strength related, because,
Mhm.
you know, coaching, run coaching, yes, there is like better ways to like, there's certain ways that things that work better than others in terms of like coaching with strength in particular. It's like proper form and just like there's a lot of stuff that goes into strength stuff. And so I cringe when I see people who don't have a background, don't have any certifications in it doing strength stuff because I'm like, no, you really should have a certification. And you also need to have worked with people, and I think that's just an unfortunate piece of the industry and social media is there's just so much unregulated stuff, and people don't really know what to look for if they're not in the industry. So
So, what is something good to look for when you're looking for a run coach or fitness coach or even a nutrition coach?
yeah, great question. So I don't use my nutrition cert, so I did it more for just my own knowledge. I don't know if I'll actually use it. I mean, I do like give nutrition guidance with my athletes, but it's not
Mhm.
something that I specifically have as a service. But with run coaches, I think like when you're looking at a running coach, it's just like any other like type of coach. You want to make sure you have a good fit, just like any other relationship, like a friendship or a romantic
True.
relationship.
True.
Um, so I think it has to be a good fit on both ends. So I have two main programs with my run coaching. I have one-on-one coaching, which is all completely customized, and that's more intimate, has more access to me. And then I have group coaching, which is still pretty customized for a group program, but I don't have as much one-on-one interaction with them. So if that's not a good fit, like they will weed themselves out because group coaching is more cyclical with races versus one-on-one is
Mhm.
more
Yeah.
long-term typically. So with one-on-one coaching, it's kind of a two-step process. So first they need to apply. So I have questions that kind of will give me a good sense if they'll be a good fit just based on a few things. And then if it looks like they'll be a good fit, I'll reach out, schedule a call and have a conversation. So that typically I kind of go over like my big expectations and I also, make sure I answer all their questions. And the call generally tells me if and just based on their questions and things they're wondering about if it's going to be a good fit. And some people are just like, and I can tell it's going to be a good fit, and some people, and I always am like, if you want to proceed, these are the next steps. And some people are like, yeah, let's get started. So we go, and then some people, want to think about it, and that's fine.
Mhm.
And there's been some people who I can tell on the call that they're not going to be a good fit for me
Mhm.
because of kind of what their goals are. Or I know that I won't be the best coach to help them meet their needs. And I just tell them that, I don't think it's going to be the best fit, but, these are some, typically if it was like a good conversation, but just not a good fit, I guide them, I give them some other potential options. Like I had one girl who definitely needed like a dietitian that was based on kind of what her challenges and what she wanted. She needed help with her nutrition first and
Mhm.
really help with like a meal plan, a dietitian, someone that had that education to help her. Yeah. But I think for someone that's looking for a coach, other than fit, making sure, like, especially if you're looking for a one on one coach, like someone that is going to customize your plan based on like whatever your goals are. And
Mhm.
that is very much my one on one is like, it doesn't matter what your goals are. You need to have a goal. I think
Mhm.
like if you are looking for a coach, you need to have a goal that you're working towards Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. And you need to kind of know what you want to get out of that coaching relationship, because if you go into it not sure what you want, it's like not really going to be a successful
Yeah.
relationship in my
I
experience,
agree.
because
I agree.
yeah, it's just like,
You need to know
you're
what you're working toward. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, oh, I want to, if it's general, it's like, well, I don't know. It's just, there's no sense of urgency and whatever. But, and then just fitness coaches in general, or if we're looking for a strength coach or whatever, like, you definitely want to look to see what their experience is. So I think for me, it's like I have several certifications, but I've also taught in group fitness for 4 years. So like I taught at Orange Theory for
Hmm.
almost 3 years. I teach at Equinox currently. I've like throughout the pandemic, I did Zoom classes for a long time, but I've taught cycling. I used to teach cycling classes as well at
Hmm.
some studios in DC. So I've taught group fitness, and I've taught a lot of people, and I've worked with a lot of people. So it's not like I just have a personal training certification, strength certification. I've done nothing with it. Like I've
Hmm.
worked with people, and I just launched a strength program for runners as well. So I think when you're looking at people, looking at their experience, what they've done, looking at what other clients have achieved with them. I don't always do a good job of like I have a lot of it on my website. I don't always do a good job on social media, something I'm working on, but like showing what clients have done, because I have a lot of people that have done a lot of great things. I just don't always do the best job of showcasing them on social media, which is really in this day and age how people see what you do. But yeah, looking for the results that you want to see, and has your coach delivered them? I think also it's like, do their values, general values, align with them? So like, I mean, for me, it's like I talk about social justice stuff sometimes on my Instagram, and if people don't agree with that, well, they're not the right client for me. So, like, I'm sorry, but like, that's my values as a person, and like, if you don't if you don't align with my values as a person, I'm not going to be a good coach for you, because we're just not going to get along as people.
That's true.
So yeah, anyway, that was a long answer, but I answered it.
You answered my question. But it's funny, I was kidding with one of my friends. We were talking about coaches, triathlon coaches. I'm like, it's kind of like dating. It's a lot of trial and error, and it's like it's hard to find the person that's just for you, and everyone has their positives and minuses. So it's kind of hard sometimes to get that right person.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So what's your idea? You mentioned that it wasn't a good fit for you. What do you find is a good client for you?
One, like I said, someone who has a specific goal and it's performance related. I don't really I don't coach weight loss. So, if people want to lose weight, that's perfectly fine. But it's not, if that is their main goal, I'm not going to be the right coach for them, because I coach to performance. So if they lose weight in the process of training for something, that's fine. And I've had, especially some of my guy clients, be like, yeah, I lost like 25 pounds or something like that, just because they've been consistent with their training and things like that. And that's perfectly fine. But this is not something that I put any sort of emphasis on. Like, we're coaching for performance. We want to get you to perform your best. So that's one thing. If people talk a lot about wanting to lose weight, then that's not going to be a good fit for me personally. If their communication is off, so I've had before where people kind of, they say we want to work together, and a girl who, like, she signed the contract and
Hmm.
then she ghosted for like 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks later she paid the first payment. And I was like, after I followed up twice or two or three
Hmm.
times, I'm like,
Hmm.
and the last one I was like, hey, I'm just assuming you don't want to work together anymore. That's perfectly fine, whatever. But she paid it and then had no explanation for why she didn't communicate with me. And
No.
that's something I stress on my call, is like, the biggest thing to me is communication. I can't coach
Hmm.
you well if you don't communicate with me. Like, I can only coach you as well as you communicate with me. Like, if something's going on in your life that's going to
Hmm.
impact your training, if you're having aches and pains or whatever it may be, if just work's super stressful and we need to take an extra rest day because of life stuff, like, that's all stuff I need to know about as a coach if I'm going to be an effective coach for you. And so a red flag early on is that if you're not communicating with me just in the setting up the coaching relationship process, that's not going to
It's
be a
not
good
gonna
fit.
work.
And so I've kind of learned that those are honestly the biggest things that I've run into, is just like poor communication. And if the goals, like, if you don't have like kind of a performance goal in mind, and it doesn't need to be, I want to PR this race. It could be like, I want to get faster, or I want to build my base up, or like, in order to then PR a year later. So like I have people that like they really need the accountability and the structure because they do have a long-term goal. They may not have a race right now, but they have a long-term goal and they need that accountability to get themselves built up so that they can be successful in their training cycle. And that's perfectly fine as long as it is you have some sort of goal that's going to be helpful. But yeah, so those are the biggest things in terms of clients. And I will say with my group program, I do have a Slack group that all of my athletes are part of. So no matter how I coach you, I have a Slack group that people are part of. And if you're part of the group program, it is beneficial to be active in Slack in some way because then you get just more out of the group program in terms of like camaraderie with your teammates. So my one-on-one clients are in there too. They don't all talk in there. Some of them do, but I do have like team races throughout the year that like I travel to and like we have team meetups. So you just get more out of the experience if you're that's a big part of my coaching is the community piece that I know not everybody has as a part of their coaching.
Yeah, I like the community aspect. And so when I used to run with Fleet, I think it was to motivate me to get out of bed. And it's always nice to have people running with you, particularly when you get past 10 miles. I think it's just better with company.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you ever had clients that you've had to fire or have fired you?
Yes. When I was first starting my business, I definitely like you're kind of, you're starting from zero. So you kind of take on anyone that is willing to work with you. So yeah, I definitely had people who were not good fit. Going back to the communication piece, there's a couple of people who just like weren't doing any of their workouts.
Not any?
Weren't doing anything. Like their plan wasn't updated. I like reached out to them. Like I had one girl who completely ghosted me. Just like early, like it was like 3 years ago. Just completely ghosted me. I was like, okay, if you're not going to do the workouts, like there's no point in me putting in work into this if you're not going to put in any work. Like if we're not going to do any workouts. And that's also another type
Red
of
flag.
client. Yeah, red flag is if they're brand new to running and they don't have that any internal motivation yet. So it's fine to like I actually really enjoy coaching newer runners. And like mid to back of the pack runners. Like I really enjoy coaching that type of
Mm-hmm.
runner. But if you're brand new, I find that sometimes, and this has been my experience, and sometimes I hesitate to bring on brand new runners because they don't do the workouts. I've had that
Mm-hmm.
happen multiple times where they just don't do the workouts. And because even though they're paying for it and it's programmed for them, they don't have this clear goal in mind because they just don't have the experience kind of in the background. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's a new runner and they're like, I'm doing this half marathon, I'm signed up, whatever, that's different from someone who's like, oh, I just want to start running again. Because then it's
Yeah.
kind of just like, so I've had to kind of let those go and just like, hey, I just don't think this is a good fit. I think, and I usually point them and hey, like, this is a great like couch to 5K plan that you can follow. Or I try to point them to a resource so they have
Mm-hmm.
something. But in cases like that, it's just like, and there are coaches that are probably there are good for them. I'm just not the coach for them. And I have learned that if it's not a good fit for me and I don't enjoy coaching them, it's just not worth like even
Yeah.
if they're paying me the money, it's not worth it.
It's not
Like
worth your
I'd
time.
rather
Yeah.
that's not worth my time and I trying to track them down and stuff like that. So and then in terms of like firing me, like, I always have the open conversation. So now I have a contract. So the first couple of years, I kind of just did month to month with my athletes, but with my one-on-one athletes, like they sign a contract. So there's different lengths of contracts that they sign for. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it naturally opens up to like the conversation of like after 6 months or 12 months, whatever it is, hey, like, and I guide those conversations of like, hey, love to work together. And I generally have a good sense, like,
If
of
it's working, if
if it's
you're
working or not, or where people are at. And I've had people who like, I have someone I coached for the last couple of years, and he wants to focus on another passion of his, photography, and kind of do less running. And he's been running a lot. He just ran a marathon and PR'd and stuff like that. So I've had those situations where like it was a great coaching relationship. They just want to kind of focus on something else. So I don't really consider that like firing. It's more so just kind of moving on, taking a pause. And I don't have as many of those now because I screen my people more. So like my roster is just, it's more people that I really enjoy working with because I do more screening of them from the get-go, which has been helpful.
Would you recommend a coach for 9 out of 10 runners, or do you think it kind of depends on the person's goals and aspirations?
I think anybody can benefit from a coach, but I think it depends on, like I said, you need to have a clear goal um, in mind, and it doesn't need to be a race. It can just be, you know, there's certain parts of your running that you want to improve upon, and it really depends on the coach because there's definitely coaches who will hold your hand. I'm not a hold your hand coach. Like I'm here for you as much as you need me. And my one-on-one athletes have texting access to me, email access to me, like um, and I want to hear from my athletes. And some of them just like put notes in
Train
their
peaks.
program, and that's fine. But um, I'm not a hold your hand coach. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, did you do your workout today? No, I expect you to do your workouts unless I hear from you and there's something going on, and then we can adjust. Like, I'm not someone who's like, you must do your workout on this day or die. Like, I'm not like that type of coach at all. Like, life happens, and, you know, we need to make adjustments. That's what I'm here for, is to help you make sure that you still can have a successful training with all the things that come at you with life. So, um, but I think for runners that don't have a clear sense of what their goals are, I don't think that they should be working with a coach until they know what their goals are. I also think there is a benefit to kind of like doing your first half or marathon or whatever and kind of failing a little bit, like
Mm-hmm.
not, kind of messing up a bunch of things, or you just like, not really knowing what you're doing, and then realizing a coach is going to help you get to the next place that you want to be. So I do think there is benefit to of doing something first and then realizing you could do it better if and like get to your goal faster if someone was helping you along the way. So
That makes sense. Was it hard to go, I guess, the transition from part time, because you said you coach with a running store, to going out on your own as a full business?
yes, I think one of the hardest things, and I'm like finally starting to kind of get in a flow, but because I have my business, but I also coach in gyms. So now I just have Equinox. I don't have two gyms that I coach at like I was pre-COVID. I was really bad at setting boundaries before COVID. So I coached like 13 to 15 classes a week and was like doing lots of stuff. And then also my business, I was always tired. I was always stressed and overwhelmed, and I didn't manage my time well. I also was like trying to do all the things. I didn't have clear goals with my business. And so it was a lot. I think COVID gave me realized I was burnt out, and that I don't want to teach that many classes ever again. I think my sweet spot's like 6 to 10 classes a week. Right now I have 7, I think, classes a week, which is a good number for me because I really enjoy teaching in person and being part of a community in terms of the gym, but it's manageable. So it doesn't feel like I'm overwhelmed. So and then just with the flow of my business, I think I finally like have very more like my services are more streamlined, and I'm like honing in on certain things, not trying to do lots of different things, but I have like specific things I'm focused on, and I have a better sense of my flow of things I need to accomplish each week with my business. So it took a while to figure that out though. So I think that's kind of most challenging thing is like you don't have like you have to create your own structure as a
Structure.
business owner. Like you don't have your boss, you're your own boss. And I think the other part, quite frankly, is like money. I mean, I just like left my job and started my business. So a lot of times that's not recommended, which like that's fine. I'm not someone who half asses things. I very much kind of when I decide something, I do it. And I kind of just have the attitude of like gonna make my I'm gonna pay my bills. I'm gonna make it work. Like I always have. Like I paid for college myself. I've always figured out a way to make sure things like happen. So I think that was my attitude going into it. But the first couple years of business like are very challenging in terms of finances, and
Mhm.
like I definitely had to cut back on stuff. I probably didn't as much as some people do, but like I'm just now starting to make close to what I was making before starting my business. But I also have like credit card bills that built up
Yeah.
because when I started my business I couldn't pay them all in full like I did
Yeah.
before. So I think that's something that is not talked about a lot, but is very much a real thing for starting a business, is especially when you just do it and you don't have like your full-time job and then there's side hustle for a
Mhm.
while. Like I just did it. So I think that's something that definitely adds stress to your plate, is the financial piece. Definitely in a much better place I was a couple of years ago, and finally don't feel overwhelmed all the time like I used to.
Which is good. Which is good.
Yeah.
Stress is bad.
Yeah.
Season 4, we will continue the segment Ask the Doc. If you have any musculoskeletal questions, please go to my website, click on the link, leave voice message, leave your question, and select questions will be answered on the segment. So your coaching business seemed a little different from others in that you focus on injury prevention, strength training, and you promote a welcoming environment for your runners. Like it seems like your business model is different from other running coaches.
So in terms of my business model, I think with the community piece, community has always been really important to me. So when I started run coaching with the program, with a local running store, building community was really important. And I think for me, when I first started running as an adult, I didn't really know a lot of people that ran. And so I didn't have that community when I first started running. And I think that I'm just stubborn, and so I stick with things. So I like, even if I don't have a community around me, now I have a really amazing running community that I'm really thankful for. But I think sometimes when people are first starting to get into running, or they don't have a lot of running friends, they need that community. That community can be so helpful to have. And so I want to at least be one person that can provide that community for people. And honestly, I think that when I was just in my life, I've had a lot of times when I haven't felt part of a community. And so I think having those experiences where I've felt very left out of things, and not saying people have left me out intentionally, but I
Mm-hmm.
think as a leader, as a coach, it's part of my responsibility to make everyone feel included. And so, with because all my coaching is online. When I lived in Washington D.C., I did do some in-person coaching with my group training program, and then when I moved to Chicago last year, all my coaching became online, and I don't plan on doing any in-person run coaching in Chicago outside of Equinox. To me, I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out a way to still keep it community, which is where Slack comes in play. And so people post a lot in Slack, and that's also why I have it kind of started it this fall, but especially starting next year, I will have designated races each season that I will be traveling to, and will be team weekends. And so if people want to sign up for that race and sign up for the program, or my one-on-one athletes, like that will be a race that I will be at. There'll be team events at, and that kind of thing. But I just think you stay in the sport, you stay in things more if you have a community of people that are supporting you. And so I just think that's really important. With the strength training, the injury prevention, I think that's always been. I think I started getting interested in that when I was running, and I had little different injuries, nothing crazy, but I went to physical therapy, and having the background that I do, like my degree was in exercise science, like I was always interested in that. And so when I actually, I mean, don't like going to PT, but I kind of do. I always enjoy like learning about my body, and now when I go to physical therapy, I always look at it as like, okay, I'm not only helping myself, but I'm learning more things that I can add to my toolbox for my athlete. I think that the body there's a lot of so many things are so connected, and there's so many things that happen with aches and pains and injuries and things like that. So I've always kind of enjoyed knowing more about that. And so I started kind of incorporating some strength stuff with the like optional after our track workouts when I coached with the running store. And then when I started my business, I was like, I'm going to get my personal training certification because I think it's important that I'm certified in what I'm talking about. Like, even though I do have a degree in it, I do think it's important that I have that certification. And then I started working in group fitness as well. The thing with strength training and injury prevention, you know, to become a good runner and meet your goals, you need to be consistent. Like consistency is a huge piece. You can't be consistent if you're always injured.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I
Mm-hmm.
think and a big thing of injuries is like one is like you're doing too much too soon. Or you're doing too many workouts at too high of an
Speed.
intensity.
Yeah.
So those are two big things. But another big thing with runners is just you have imbalances because you're just running all the time and you're
Mm-hmm.
not strengthening. Your body's not strong enough to handle the stress
Mm-hmm.
that you're putting on
Mm-hmm.
it. And so strength training is so important. And I think a lot of runners don't know what to do. They don't make the time to do it, or they just do lots of random stuff. And so
Yep.
like, so yeah. And so I think like I did Zoom classes throughout the pandemic that were very focused on runners, and those had great results. And people like, I had a really solid crew, but I got really, one, I was zoomed out. I just didn't
Yes.
want to do Zoom, teach Zoom anymore. And then two, you can only reach so many people when you're doing classes. So I just launched last month, a few weeks ago, a monthly strength program for runners, and it's through an app called Trainerize. And so it's like several workouts each week that kind of progress, and every month
Cool.
there's a new set of workouts.
Their videos.
Yeah, so there's videos of all the exercises. There's a place to put down like the weight that they're using, the reps they're doing. So it kind of progresses throughout, but they're very much designed with runners in mind. There's two that are like 25, 30 minutes, and then two that are like shorter, like 10, 15. So all the workouts combined is like just over an hour a week. So it's very much like able to fit into a runner's schedule. They can do it when they want. And it's meant to like focus, like it's kind of a combo of bigger compound movements as well as small like movements, abandoned movements, things that runners need to be doing as well. So it's a combo of both. And I think with my background, it's an area that not a lot of run coaches like have the expertise on. So it's like I have the knowledge from group fitness, from personal training stuff, from like functional strength courses I've taken, as well as teaching people in person, like helping people with their form, and also having gone to physical therapy a lot myself, and just knowing and taking in also like what my athletes have come to me with in terms of their injuries. Like that's all stuff that kind of have combined develop the workouts that I do so that they're kind of helping to prevent injuries before they happen, but they're also meant to be not spending hours in the gym. So they're like short and effective. And runners don't need to be spending hours in the gym. They can if they want to, but really like an hour or so a week can go a very long way in like preventing injuries. And not a lot of runners do it.
I think that's very important. I'm like the poster child of running and other injuries. My first running coach, I gave her my list of races and what I did. Basically, I was doing too much. She's like, "That's why you're injured," and I didn't listen to her. And actually, she fired me because I was still doing too much. So I can attest to injury prevention and strength training are key to runners, and a lot of people think they just need to run more, but it's not always about running more.
Yep.
So, what is the most rewarding aspect of coaching?
So a couple. So one is just like within my Slack group when I see my athletes just like how supportive they are of each other. Like sometimes it just makes me want to cry because it's, I'm active in the Slack group and answer questions like that, but a lot of the Slack group is driven by my athletes and just the support they show each other. People post stuff. It's a very safe space. And I think that just awesome to see just the community that has built from my team. Like it's just really, really awesome. I will say when I left DC, a lot of my athletes still live in DC because I lived in DC for so long. And that's where I started my business. I have athletes everywhere. So now we kind of call it TW West Coast, TW East, TW Midwest. So
Midwest.
there are people all over now, but There's still a lot of people in DC, and I think there always will be, just because that's where I was for so long. But when I moved to Chicago, I was actually a little bit scared, and I think that's actually what prevented me from moving, even though I think subconsciously I wanted to move a few years prior, but I think I kind of pushed it aside. I was scared of moving because I thought that my business wouldn't survive,
Mm-hmm.
because I had so many clients in DC. And obviously with the pandemic, everybody had to pivot. And so it showed me, well, yes, I can do this all online. So, but I was a little scared that I would lose a lot of clients because I wasn't there anymore. But that hasn't happened, and they still meet up for runs
Okay.
and like, so that's one thing that is really rewarding. And the other is just like seeing my athletes hit their goals. I mean, I had so Richmond was a team weekend about a month ago, and there was I think there was 12 of us there from the team, and it just, I don't know. I do coach a lot of runners who are in their like 40s, 50s kind of range. I definitely have
Okay.
runners that are younger, but I coach a good number of runners who are in their 40s and 50s. And, and I mean, I have some in their 20s and 30s too, but I'd say probably the mean age is somewhere probably high 30s, maybe low
Okay.
40s for my athletes. But seeing some of them, like I have a guy who is mid 50s, and he had like a 45-minute marathon PR. He hadn't run a marathon in like 10 years, 11 years. And he missed Boston by like 1 minute, Boston qualifier by 1 minute. And like, that was just, a lot of my athletes had amazing PRs. And so just seeing their hard work pay off is just so rewarding. And this is also rewarding, is when my athletes, they listen to their body. So like athletes who maybe would have run through something, like,
Mm-hmm.
or who are like, hey, I stopped my run early because I was having this pain. So that also is rewarding, because they have ingrained in them to be smarter runners. I think for
Yes.
me,
It's a
it's like,
process to get
yeah,
there.
it is. And I think that, like, I mean, I have people that I've been coaching for a while, and a lot of it is because they want that structure, the accountability, and just someone telling them what to do. So, I mean, there's some people, like, once they leave me, I hope what the biggest thing they take away is being a smarter runner, and knowing, not running through pain, and like
Mm-hmm.
knowing it's okay to take an extra rest day, and not beating themselves up. I definitely have athletes who I am sometimes a therapist a little bit too as
Mm-hmm.
well. Especially during the pandemic, I was, of just being like, give yourself some grace, and like, it's okay to take an extra rest day, and like, this is going to help you more later. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's just rewarding to see the growth in my athletes, not just with their physical, their times and their speed, but seeing the progress mentally, and like how they've progressed like mentally is really rewarding as well.
I was just gonna comment. I love your Instagram posts because they're real. I know you mentioned rest days, and such people think stress is just related to, say, their job or their relationship, but it can have an effect on your body, and that can affect your run performance and can make you more prone to injuries. So it's like a lot of people on social media, I don't know, promote going hard all the time, and that's just not realistic, and that will cause you to get injured. I've been there. Every run is not supposed to be a PR, and you're not supposed to go hard all the time. It's
Yep.
balance. So that's why I
Yep.
love your Instagram posts.
Thank you. It's hard to combat. Like I said, the fitness industry is just a beast. Obviously running is part of the fitness industry, and it can be exhausting sometimes, just all the stuff that's on social media that's just so, it's just making people get injured, and also people get ingrained in them if they need to go hard all the time. And this is not just with running, it's just with fitness in general. If they have to go hard all the time to see results, then eventually they typically burn out, and then they have to like stop for a while, or they burn out of running, or they burn out of whatever it may be, because they did too much of it. And that's just really sad too, because then, it's a fine line, because you do need to go hard sometimes. I think sometimes with my coaching, like, I very much am an understanding coach, but sometimes I'm also just like, why isn't this happening? Like, there's some people I just be like, why isn't this happening? Finding that line, it's a fine line of like being a tough coach, and being like, what's going on here, but also having grace and knowing that life happens. So it's kind of you kind of get to know your athletes and kind of know where you can push them in certain areas. But there's definitely sometimes that it's choose my words carefully because I need to give some tough love, but I also like don't want to come across as like I don't understand what's going on in your life type of thing.
So how do you balance coaching and your own running, fitness, and goals?
Great question. So so one of the reasons that I do not plan on doing any in-person run coaching in Chicago is it was really challenging for me to balance that in DC. So when I coached running in person and I did track workouts once a week and I led long runs once a week, it was really hard for me to separate my own running from my coaching. And I found that here I have I have a run group I go to in Chicago that's purely for my enjoyment. Like I'm not a coach. I mean, a lot of people know I'm a coach and whatever, that's fine. But I'm not coaching the group. I'm not a leader of the group. Like I mean, I've been there for a long time, so I'm kind of OG, but I don't need to be involved. Like I know some of the back end stuff that goes on because I'm friends with the leaders of the group, but I don't need to be planning a bunch of stuff because I enjoy planning stuff, but that's just where I go for fun and my own enjoyment. And I think something I'm doing this year in particular is now that races are back, and hopefully they'll stay back. They're outside, so I don't think that they're going to be canceled for COVID stuff, but is not racing the same races that I'm traveling to like cheering at races that I'm not gonna run myself. So I think for me, it's just I have different goals, and I think it's separating. I think the online and the in-person coaching has been helpful in Chicago, so I can focus on my own goals and still give quality coaching to my athletes and not get burnt out. I also like during my marathon training have a coach myself because then it takes the mental energy of having to figure out my own workouts. So I have a coach myself
Good.
during kind of high times, especially this summer, or like when I'm in an intense training cycle. So like right now I'm taking a break from having a coach just because I'm kind of just doing whatever. I had to kind of have some different goals that aren't completely running related. So just kind of doing my own thing. But the separation has been helpful. I think it's interesting too, is I think sometimes when I'm in my own downs of running, like it's harder for me to think of content and things like that because maybe I'm not as motivated or I'm kind of like in my off season. And so I've had to like check myself on that a little bit. Like obviously it's okay because I have the same ups and downs that other runners do, even though I'm not immune to it because I'm a coach. But I think because I do have a presence like online and things like that, it's just something I'm more conscious of when I'm having those downtimes because I'm not as creative with thinking of content because I'm not as feeling as inspired. So it definitely can impact things, but it's just, I think the awareness is important and then finding ways to deal with it.
So how did you start running in the first place?
So I ran cross country and track in middle school and high school. So I did run like as a kid. And then I really didn't do much in college. I would run here and there, but I wasn't super active. And then when I was a teacher, I taught for 4 years. I really didn't work out. I worked a lot. So I was on my feet all the time. So I was really active. I just didn't work out. So when I moved to DC, 2009, started working. I was still in education, but I was working more of an office setting. So I wasn't as active and I was my clothes were fitting a lot tighter. So I'm not someone who weighs myself. I don't even own a scale, but I
Wow.
do I kind of, yeah, I don't care about weight. It's more how do my clothes feel and how do I look? So my clothes were just fitting a lot tighter. And I was like, okay, I need to start working out because I'm not as active in my job. So I started, I joined the gym and but I'm like, I just wasn't very motivated. So a friend of mine who I went to college with asked if I wanted to do, she was thinking about doing this half marathon. I was like, okay. So I signed up for the half marathon and that's what motivated me to start actually running again. And, that was in 2010. I did my first half marathon. So that's how I kind of got into it. I found a training plan online and just followed the training plan and, ran it. And I didn't really have friends that ran at that time. So I would like ask questions at like the running store, like about gels, and I would read at Runner's World. And I would just do a lot of reading and like just figure out what I needed to do. So, and then from there, it really was like signing up for races. So for a long time, the only way I trained was by having races on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that's not the case. Like, I run because I enjoy it and I have a kind of consistent habit. But for a long time, it was like I signed up for races and that's I had a lot of races on the calendar. So I always was training for the most part. And so say it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't have to have a race on the calendar to like run. Like I enjoyed running and that kind of stuff. And that's when I started running with more running groups as well. I think that's helpful to have like running groups because like right now, like I'm running maybe 3 days a week because I'm focusing on other like cross training stuff, under strength training a lot more. So, but I'm like, okay, well, I have a run group. Like I have reasons to run because I have people to meet and see. That's really the only reason I'm running right now is for to see people or convenience, like to run commute to like get to
Yeah.
Equinox. But that's my only motivation right now to run is to see people. So it's helpful.
When I first started doing races, I love races. I like the people, the crowds, the high fives. So I used to make a joke. It's like a run to race because you have to train to actually
Yeah.
race.
Yeah.
But now it's
Yep.
like more because it's like I do triathlons more so, and it's like if I run too much, I'm injured. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like a stress reliever, and I've been so hurt so long. So it's like I'm just happy when I can just run and just be carefree and not think about is my knee hurting? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? Is my foot hurting? Anyway.
Yeah. No, the mental piece, I agree with you. Like the mental benefits. I think too, when you realize that with running or whatever your sport of choice is, that the mental benefits a lot of times outweigh the physical benefits because it gives you that relief.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite race?
Yes. My favorite half marathon would probably be like Richmond.
Really?
I know
Okay.
it's kind of random, but so I've done Richmond half marathon 5 times. I've PR'd 3 times on that course, and it's a great race. It's like it's big enough that it's like there's enough people, there's like people around you, but it's small enough that it's like it's easy to navigate. I like the city of Richmond, and when I lived in DC, it's a 2-hour drive. So now, I flew in a month ago when I was there, but I don't know. I really you get a fleece blanket at the end, like
I
it's
like
some good.
blankets.
Yeah, they have good like get pizza and beer at the end, and like they have a good finish line thing. So it's always good weather. So that's probably like my favorite half marathon. And then my favorite marathon, I'm doing the world majors and I'm also doing a race in all 50 states. So
Okay.
I've done 27 states. It's a half or a full. And so I've done 27. And then I've done 3 of the world majors. So I've done Berlin, New York, and Chicago. But so Chicago is definitely so New York is amazing. I definitely want to do New York again. Chicago definitely just is one of my favorite marathons. And I think it's funny that I live here now because I did it twice before I lived here, and I
Hmm.
just did it this past fall as
That's
first
funny. I
time
did the same.
coming
The
here.
2 before I moved here, and then 1, and I've done New York and Berlin, and I want to do all the majors.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. Yeah. You know, I, I don't know. Chicago I mean, I think there's a reason I moved here. It's just like, I like the energy here I love the energy here. But Big Sur is really awesome. It's
Hmm.
beautiful. So I
Never
did
done
Big
that.
Sur. So that's a really beautiful race. I really like Grandma's. A lot of in Duluth, which I'm doing the half this coming year, not the full, but I'm doing the half. A lot of my races that I like the most, a lot of times have like good memories associated with them as well.
Hmm.
So I think, there's races I've done that there's some races I wouldn't do again just because there's nothing special about it.
Yeah.
And I did that state and it was kind of hard to get to or like whatever. But there's some races that I think because I had positive memories associated with them, they stick out in my head and even though Chicago, I had a bad race in 2017, like I still love the I still love the race. So, but yeah, so those are probably some of my favorites. But the cool thing about doing a race in every state is like you see so many places you wouldn't see
Hmm.
otherwise. And like there's places in the South and places in the middle of the country that like I would never go to if I wasn't doing the state goal. And you discover some cool things. So every city, town has cool things, and I don't know, it gives you a better appreciation also for the country that we live in, and
That's true.
that kind of thing.
I know you recently moved from DC. Is the DC running community any different from Chicago, or you feel like it's similar? Runners are runners.
They're definitely different. So, and I think it's because the culture are different in different cities. So DC is very much a city that, what do you do? Like your job is very like much part of your identity, and which is fine. Chicago is more like, so my run crew, my run club, like we always go to the bar after. I'd say Chicago has a bigger diversity of run clubs. There's some that are very competitive. Like Chicago has some really fast runners. And I think there's some run clubs that are very competitive and whatever. But there's also a lot of running groups that are, social in nature. And now that we're still in the pandemic, but now that run groups are meeting again, like I'm always discovering new ones. I kind of find ones on social media. DC also has a lot of running groups, and I ran with District Running Collective in DC for 3 years, and I still like kind of am connected with them, and I love them. It was a more diverse running group than the one I run with here, but DC doesn't have as many running groups, I would say. So Chicago it has the lakefront and has the 606, but it doesn't have as many like running trails unless you were to like go outside of the immediate city. DC has more trails, I'd say, also because you have Maryland and Virginia like right there. So there's probably like 4 or 5 different routes / trails that like I'd alternate between in pre-COVID times. COVID, it was a little different because some of the trails were crazy busy because you have everybody just wanting to be outside. So you have people just crowding the trails, and the trails aren't as big as they are like lakefront trails. So I think there's a stronger running community in Chicago. And I think that also having a marathon that is it's a world major, I think also really brings together the running community. So I think I don't know. I'm still learning a lot of the local races in this area in Chicago because I've only been here for a year, and good part of it was in the pandemic when there wasn't stuff going on. So, but I think that, yeah, both have really strong running communities, but I think having a world major marathon just like adds a little extra something to the city. And like, it's really cool to be in a city that has a world major. It's just, it's, DC has Marine Corps Marathon, which is a great marathon. I did it 3 times, but you don't it's not a world major. So it's just, you don't have the excitement, and you don't have like the whole city getting into it. Like a lot of people in DC who aren't runners and be like, why are they shutting our roads down? Like, it's just like, it's very, I'm serious. Like, can't get through. I have to, whatever. I'm sure people will complain here too, but like, I don't know. I think that there's so many people in Chicago that running the marathon is a bucket list, even if they're not really a runner, because Chicago is such a big marathon. That is not the case in DC. So I think in some ways it's almost easier to get into running in Chicago because there's just more support for it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So part of my podcast is to have guests who've overcome obstacles to make it to their finish line, whether it be running, personal, professional. Can you share an experience with my listeners?
I'm first generation college student. So I come from a low income background, and like just going to college and making it through college and being able to, because I paid for college myself. And there was a lot of times in college where I had no idea how I was going to pay for the next semester. And I didn't have the support from home because no one had been to college before. And so, yeah, so I think I've had a lot of hurdles. That was definitely a big one, is just like paying my way through getting to college and paying my way through college and navigating the whole thing, a lot of it by myself. And I didn't have, even though there are a lot of resources in college, I didn't know about a lot of them because I didn't know to even explore them. I think sometimes when you're first generation college student, it's not just sometimes the financial piece. It's also like you don't have people, like your parents didn't do it, so they you have no guidance of
Yeah.
like
You don't
what
know
you should be.
the
Yeah.
connections or people you should seek out and things like that.
Right, exactly. So I feel like I did fine and I did teach for America after college and, which is a pretty hard program to get into. But I think that was like one hurdle. And then leaving a career after 12 years and starting a business, I think is a pretty big leap. And, it's been just over 4 years since I started my business and I'm still happening and we're still going, we're growing, a little bit each year and then moving in the middle of the pandemic to a city where I really didn't know anybody. I feel like I've had a good number of like hurdles I've had to overcome and figure things out, but I'm someone who like doesn't always I don't dwell on I don't dwell on my hurdles. I kind of
Mhm.
just like, all right, I got to figure this out.
Mhm.
That's like, I just like with my business, it was like, I didn't even consider staying in education any longer. I was like, I'm really burnt out and I'm leaving. So like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so it was like, well, if pay my bills, I can do this. I can always get a bartending job. And I did bartend for like a year,
Cool.
my first year in business, a few times a week, just to help pay off, to have some spending money, pay off some bills. So I've always been just a like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. I need to be better about asking for help because I
It's
definitely have
hard.
had times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
And giving myself grace because I think a lot of times I have just like overcome different things, but I don't really sit down to process it. And I also don't give myself enough credit for things that I've like
Mhm.
overcome. Like,
Yeah.
and my friends are like, "You've done, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You did XYZ." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." Or like, "That's a big deal." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so." Like, even just the fact that like I'm the only one in my family that has went to college. And I have my master's as well. Like, I went and got my master's as well. Like, I don't always acknowledge how big a deal that actually is. The fact that like I am the only one in my family that has a college education. My younger brothers didn't go to college either. So I am the only one who went to college. So yeah, in terms of hurdles, I think like there's always been kind of hurdles. Some of them self-made, like, starting a business is a self-made
Yeah.
hurdle of
But that's
like
a good hurdle.
whatever.
It's a good hurdle.
When I decided I was going to move, like I literally decided on a trip to Michigan. I drove to Michigan to get away from DC for a few weeks during the pandemic. And I was like, I need to move. I'm moved to Chicago. And 2 months later, I moved. When I make a decision, I figure out a way to do it. And I don't really, and I know not everyone lives their life that way, but I don't like to be, if I know that if I can tell that I'm really unhappy, then
Just do it.
yeah, make a change to
I
do it.
think it's
So,
maybe it's the like runner's mentality. Like when you're, I don't know, every marathon I've run has always been, I shouldn't say a disaster, but something went wrong. But it's like you kind of have to make it through the pain or make it through the suffering. Because I remember one race I was about to die, and I'm like, if I can do this, I can do anything. So it kind of just changes your attitude. Like I can deal with this BS because I've done that. I've done this hard thing, so I can do another hard thing. So it kind of helps you kind of process things outside of running.
oh, 100%. If you can do those hard things, I use that in coaching too. I coach treadmill classes at Equinox, and when we're in hard intervals, I'm like, this is the mental toughness, like this piece right here, like this is where you change. Yeah, physically, but mentally, like this is where you change. When you push yourself, when you dig a little bit deeper, like this is where the change happens that you can bring to other parts of your life. Is like when you're working really hard and you do something that you didn't think you could do, or that was really
Mm-hmm.
hard to accomplish, like it does go to other parts of your life. And I do think that running, or really any endurance sport, really lends itself well to that, and you see more of
So, if a present day Tammy could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
that. That's a good question. I think to be more open to like help. Like I close myself out a lot. So I'm very much I close myself out a lot to help, or it's hard for me to, it takes a while for me to trust people. I think that I definitely missed out on certain things because I close myself out off. I think I definitely take big leaps and I bet on myself, but I also there's a lot of small times when I don't bet on myself that I
Mm-hmm.
should have. So I
Mm-hmm.
think like going back, like telling my younger self to like not care as much about what other people think,
Mm-hmm.
to be more open to people's offers of like wanting to help you and not think of it as like a weakness. Like if you need to ask for help. From a young age, I've always been like that, I'm very independent and like I can do things myself. I think that it's just now starting to like really undo that a little bit and recognizing that.
Any last minute words of advice for my listeners?
Set those big goals, go after them, be consistent. If you don't like to run, find an activity that you do like to do. I think, sometimes people have asked me, I'm a running coach, obviously, of like, what if I don't like to run? Then that's okay. Like, that's fine. But I think like in fitness in general, you got to find what you enjoy doing. So, because you're never going to be consistent with something you don't like. So if you hate
Mm-hmm.
running, like don't run. If you hate cycling, don't cycle. Like if you hate yoga, I don't really like, I'm not gonna say I hate yoga, but I don't really enjoy yoga. Like stretching's fine, but I don't enjoy yoga. Then like don't do that. So just find something you enjoy doing. Move your body. Movement is medicine. Movement
It
is
is.
helpful. So
Where can people find you?
yeah, so social media, my handle is coach_Tammy.w. And my website, my business is TW Training and Wellness. So twtrainingwellness.com.
Well, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rita.
That wraps up this episode of Running is Cheaper Than Therapy podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you already haven't, please download Running is Cheaper Than Therapy podcast on Apple, Spotify, or however you listen to your favorite podcast. If you have any questions, concerns, or possible show topics, please email runningischeaperthantherapy, OLB, Omaha Love Brown. Again, that's runningischeaperthantherapy, Omaha Love Brown @gmail.com. I also can be reached via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Handle We Life, We Love. OUI Life, OUI Love. Thank you, and please tune in again.